Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I am Dalton Mortimer the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man. And the plot thickens yet again. I thought it couldn't become more interesting than it was last week, in the aftermath of the debate and or big boy announcement. But what a difference a few days can make. And we were literally discussing this at 10 minutes after it happened because E messages me and goes, "Hey, Trump just got shot, so we have a topic for next week." And I'm like, "Wait, seriously, what?" And then, you know, the rabbit hole opened, and we've been keeping an eye on it for the last week or so.
Yeah. So I've been reading up as much as I can about the events that took place on Saturday, but some of the things are fairly clear, but some of them only raise more questions. And one of the things that raises more questions is the performance of the Secret Service. But I don't want to get into that detail right now because we have a video that we're going to go through to basically walk us through the
Hmm.
events and the information of the situation. And they definitely do get into the Secret Service, but that's definitely something that I have a lot of questions about.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the video. This is
Yep.
from the podcast of the Lotus Studios. Um, Shout out to them, and you should definitely check them out because they
E-
make really great content.
Even though they do sometimes go a little bit too far off the deep end.
Uh, yeah, occasionally. I don't agree with everything they say, but they are a, a good source and something worth listening to at the very least.
Yeah, it's good to gauge people and perspectives that even the ones you don't agree with or that you can only partially agree with, because it helps to keep you actually stable in the news cycle and not get you know caught by the various undertows of radicalization that exist.
Yeah. All right. Getting play.
Yep.
There are a few events that will go down in the history books, I think, regarding American politics. There's the 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center, the 2008 financial crisis, the election of Donald Trump in 2016, the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns of 2020 onwards. And then there was the 13th of July, 2024, when former President Donald Trump was giving a speech in Butler, Pennsylvania, or at least near it. And then an assassin tried to kill him, and he got away with his life by the skin of his ear, I suppose you could say. And I'm going to play the full video. This is coverage from NTD, I believe. Supposedly, this is the best you can find, and it's certainly the best I've been able to find of what actually happened. So I'm going to play it, and then we're going to talk about all of the important details.
If
So here we
you
go.
want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
So
Now, the first few gunshots were obviously from the shooter, but I believe that last one we just heard was from a counter sniper shooting at the assailant, and the assailant is dead. Which is
yeah, the only regret I have there is we will now never know his rationale for doing it. Um, and I really wish we would have known what his rationale was for doing it, because in the intervening hours after this incident, everyone and their dog had a different take on who the shooter was, what their motive was, what the context of the shooting was, etc., ad nauseum. And if he had been taken alive, we could have actually got some definitive info as to that. But now it probably will always remain shrouded in the fog of war, so to speak.
if you were to make an educated guess about what his motivations would be, what do you think it would be?
Honestly, and this was something I definitely wanted to talk about in relation to this, what the hell else did you think was going to happen? Oh, believers in the impact of media on people's psyches and quote unquote stochastic terrorism. Like, I don't believe in most circumstances in stochastic terrorism because I think the term stochastic terrorism is too often used to, retroactively guilt by association anything that people don't like about someone, regardless of whether it's actually relevant or actionable in relation to anything or not. But if stochastic terrorism meaningfully exists in any way, I'm willing to concede that it might exist in a situation like the one we have here, where for between 8 and 9 years, every facet of the news media, the journalist class, through every demonizing word that a allegedly secular ideology could at this man, and the realms of fiction also through every demonizing trope at this man they could. Everything from The Simpsons to The Boys to, um, every Disney Marvel thing for the last phase or so. Like, in news reality, quote unquote, and in fiction, and in academia, and in the realms of psychology, they threw everything they could at this man. And the only thing I'm left with is I can't believe stuff like this didn't happen sooner, because they have been swearing up and down, "My threat to democracy this, my fascist that, my wannabe dictator this, my white supremacist that," at this man, despite the fact that he's a 90s style business Democrat with populist leanings and an anti-establishment streak. And these are the people who allegedly believe in things like implicit bias and stochastic terrorism. So where the hell exactly is their comeuppance for the 9 years of borderline all pervasive nonstop demonization of this man and anyone who loosely was affiliated with this man, even in their minds, let alone in the minds of the actual people themselves. So, like, even Fox News would ordinarily prioritize never Trumpers and establishment Republicans over MAGA Republicans. So, when every aspect of the mainstream media and every entertainment mechanism in Hollywood all agree that this man is the devil and a threat to democracy and a fascist and a theocrat and a Nazi and everything else, what did you expect was going to happen? This was borderline inevitable. I'm just surprised it took this long.
Yeah, I mean, seeing you can actually see this, and it's not surprising because like the amount of negative rhetoric surrounding Trump is, I think, unprecedented in modern American politics. Like, it's just been to an absolutely insane degree. Like, it's absolutely irrational. And not only that, but like you can see just people who are not just like constantly online, like leftist talking heads or influence, but like
Bread
I've
tubers.
seen, yeah, I've seen like social media posts from people you would think were just everyday people saying that they wish the assassin hadn't missed. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell is wrong with you people?
Well, and again, it's kind of inevitable because, again, under normal circumstances, I'm very hesitant to believe in the concept of stochastic terrorism. But in cases like this, where it's so overt, so all pervasive, and so propagandistic, for like literally 8 years or 9 years, because I think it started in 2015 when he announced that he was going to run. Um, they've been saying he's a Russian asset, he's a Nazi, he's a fascist, he's a theocrat, he's a white supremacist, he's alt right, he's this, he's that, he's the other, he's toxic and a beacon for incels, and like, pick a negative, allegedly secular thing to call a person, and the only thing he hasn't been called is a communist. But that's largely because the people accusing him of fascism and Nazism and theocracy and everything the fuck else think that communism is, at least in theory, a decent idea. That's the only reason why he wasn't stuck with the communist label. But barring that one, example, or, that communist Marxist approach, he's been taxied with every, negative, inflammatory term you could shake a stick at, and it's been all pervasive and relentless. Because let's say you didn't buy into any of the mainstream media's gobbledygook. Could you go to entertainment or escapist, fiction to escape this? Hell no. They turned Homelander into Trump. The Simpsons mocked Trump. Every major uh, comedian, either on the stand-up circuit or in the late night talk show space, were constantly fear-mongering about Trump. And on the list goes, and everything associated with Trump, from Gamergate to Comicsgate to the Fandom Menace to, everything the fuck else. Toxic, Nazis, alt-right, this, that, the other, for 8 years, all pervasively nonstop. And they're surprised that some crazy person raised in this milieu of 8 years of nonstop, there are fascists and Nazis and white supremacists hiding around every corner, and they might even be people finally goes off and goes, you know what? If he's such a threat to democracy, I'm going to kill the fucker. And we're all supposed to act, Kel surprise about it. I don't buy that.
Yeah. But let's keep going.
Yeah.
You could see the woman leave Trent's chest area exposed, and then later comes down to cover it. But you can see she's not tall enough to cover his head.
And again, like I was joking about before we went live, yes, I'm sure there are real world equivalents to Karen Murphy from the Dresden Files somewhere, and I'm sure some of them did make it to the top of the list here, but there aren't enough of them to justify this being as common as it currently is. There aren't enough Ellen Ripleys or Sarah Connors or Karen Murphys to justify this kind of overrepresentation in these kind of jobs.
Especially when people's lives are on the line, especially when she's supposed to be covering one of the most divisive political figures in modern American history, which people have openly threatened his life multiple times over the course of the last 8 years. So,
and yet
really,
again, here the specter of DEI rears its ugly head. And
yeah, and that's not just Dalton saying that, because that's actually one of the stated goals of the director of the FBI is to have, I believe she said, 30% female agents by 2030.
and again, I'm not saying there are no women who are the kind of ass kicking badasses you'd want. There are Gina Carano's, there are freaking Ronda Rousey's, or fictional examples like Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, and Karen Murphy. They do exist, but are there enough of them to justify it being 30% of the workforce of the Secret Service? Only if you drastically lower the numbers of Secret Service agents, which, as we saw in this instance, there's a very good reason why you don't want to lower the number of Secret Service agents to get that percentage. Because if you lower the number of Secret Service positions, then not every avenue of fire is appropriately blocked.
Well, I've heard that the Secret Service is actually woefully understaffed, so they don't have enough agents to actually properly cover all the area where the candidates go and travel and hold rallies. So I believe that they oftentimes work together with like Homeland Security or FBI or local law enforcement to make up for their low numbers.
Which in and of itself is somewhat suspicious when you consider that I believe the Secret Service literally asked for more members to um, guard former presidents like Trump, and they were rebuffed. Which, again, it's the eternal question: where does the social justice oriented ideology stop and the incompetence begin? Especially when you consider that being explicitly anti the concept of meritocracy is a key cornerstone of social justice. It becomes very hard to tell where the anti meritocratic ideology ends and the just simple, human error of incompetence begins.
What's it play?
Yep.
You can see Trump there in that moment showing immense courage and fortitude in the face of impending death, putting up his fist, showing that he was okay and saying, fight, fight, fight. This is
Yeah,
a very powerful message.
never mind just bravery in, impending death. That is like classic heroism levels of iconography there. The man the man is 70 goddamn 8 years old, and he apparently still has the brass plated balls to, seconds after being shot at, raise his fist Breakfast Club style in defiance of what machinations may come.
You
Just
know,
the sheer bad attitude there bears remarking upon, frankly.
I think it's even more impressive given his age, considering that the shock of being shot at would have caused many people to have an outright heart attack.
Yeah, there are people who go into shock over car accidents, and this man, in his dotage, mind you, um, had the intestinal and testosterone related fortitude to, again, go full Breakfast Club as he was immediately in the aftermath of being shot at. Like, the sheer just punk rock of vibes emanating from this man in this moment. And he's a fucking geezer, mind you. He like people forget, but your testosterone decreases as you age, as do your reflexes and your clarity of mind. And yet, President Donald Trump, former though he may be at this moment, had the sheer 80s level punk rock bad attitude to, after being shot at the age of 78, raise his fist in Breakfast Club style defiance. My
And
God, that's iconic.
people have been, decrying the strong man of politics archetype, but strength and courage are two things people do actually look for in a leader. And when you see Trump, standing up tall, raising his fist after being wounded, in comparison to Joe Biden, shuffling around and fumbling his words, the difference could not be more clear between which of these two has the strength to actually lead a country.
Yeah, there are macho guys in the peak of their physical primes who wouldn't have the strength of, spirit or of, personality or whatever to do this in the peak of their physical health. Here comes along Trump in his he should be in a nursing home years, and he's still fucking defiant fist to the sky in the face of being shot at by bullets. It's genuinely iconic imagery. Like, I know we always talk about, it's a hard thing to be at the intersection of such, historic times and everything. But if there has ever been a more historic image in my lifetime that's actually a positive image, because of course there are a lot of negative images that have occurred in my lifetime, like 9/11 and so on. But in terms of like positive, like classically heroic iconography, I can't think of a more badass or defiant example of um like just classically heroic virtues that happened IRL and wasn't staged by Hollywood. Because yeah, you can point to like the standing on the desk scene in Dead Poet Society or the We Shall Not Be Moved and stuff in different movies and stuff, but that is in movies that's specifically set up to be that kind of evocatory moment. But here's Trump doing it, IRL, unironically.
Yeah, and I've seen pictures from this, and these are truly heroic looking, like embodiment of the American spirit type pictures here. These are going to go down in the history books.
And while we're on the
And
Yeah, while
I,
we're on the topic of classical heroism, let's talk about the other guy who got killed at this, rally. May he rest in peace. This guy who was a firefighter who, in his last dying moments, used himself as a human shield to protect his wife and kids. Unironically,
yeah,
it's
a
speaking of
genuine American
classical
hero.
heroism.
Yeah, and this guy, he dedicated his life to helping others. He entered a profession where he knew he would be risking his life in the service of others, and I'm pretty sure the last thing that he thought was going to happen was him losing his life going to a Trump rally, where bad things usually never happen.
Yeah.
But I was listening to Tim Pool's take on all this, and he actually cleared up a bit, and I agree. And he was right to do so because he said that one of the things that men often think about is that in a situation like this, we would also have the courage to, put ourselves in between the people that we care about and danger. Like, but the problem is, like, we never know if we're going to actually be able to step up in that moment until it actually happens. But this guy stepped up in that moment. He's been stepping up his entire life with his job as a firefighter, and a
Yeah,
truly good man was lost that day.
because we never we would all like to think that we're the protagonist of the story, that we're the heroes of our own story, so to speak. But it's honestly kind of a 50-50 shot whether you're one of the, hero waiting to be tested people, or whether you're the civilization is a thin veneer over barbarism people. And it should be rewarded that guys like um, this firefighter who gave his life for his family, and also Trump, actually do exist in real life. Um, because, there are a lot of very nihilistic people who say that almost everyone is secretly just a backstabbing psychopath in the waiting. The civilization is a thin veneer over barbarism. But in real life circumstances, what we usually see is there are two kinds of people. There are those civilization is a, or I guess three kinds of people. There are the civilization is a thin veneer over barbarism people, the warlords in waiting. There are the heroes waiting to hear the call of the Campbellian hero's journey, who are made better by adverse circumstances. And then there are the followers who have to decide whether they will follow the civilization as a thin veneer over barbarism people, or the people who are metal tested by adverse circumstances.
Yeah.
And I know we'd all like to think that we would be one or the other of those two, but in actuality, most of us are just the followers. But it's important to remember that for as many people as there are for whom civilization really is a thin veneer over barbarism, there are also people who have latent heroic potential who are just waiting for their moment or waiting for the right set of circumstances in which to flourish as heroes.
Yes. And speaking of Trump and heroism, like I've heard a lot of people say before this happened that Donald Trump is really only in this for himself, that it's all about, pleasing his ego. And Trump does have an ego. Nobody can deny that. But he can't, there's no way he's doing it just for the ego. I mean, look at what the man has been through, like the slander on his name, the attacks on his businesses, like being arrested and threatened with, prison, and now being shot at. No one who's just doing it for their own ego would subject themselves through all that and yet still keep going.
Like, yes, Trump is he is a bombastic motherfucker, and he is a bit of a showman, and a bit of a used car salesman, so to speak, and no one is going to deny that, including him, by the way, because usually when people say things like that about Trump, he just goes shrug, yes. What part of me was being subtle? But even excluding all of that, even excluding the used car salesman smarminess of Trump, he must have a core that is worth something, because he has been the public enemy number one for 8 years. And again, the entire news media apparatus, yes, even including Fox News, because they would rather deal with an ever-Trumper or a establishment Republican, has thrown every sling and arrow they could at the man, and he has managed to take every shot they've handed him, including the very literal ones, and just fuck yeah, I'm gonna do this at the end of it, as we saw with the whole Breakfast Club fist in the air thing. Like that appears to be the, if it can be said that adverse circumstances reveal who we really are, and I think that is a meaningful standard. Well, here is the man facing an adverse circumstance with his head not only held high, but his fist raised in defiance in the air. What more proof do you need that the man at least has some fortitude that is worth, commending?
And to circle back a little bit to the idea that Trump staged this, which is again frankly ridiculous. The thing is, Trump didn't need to stage this because his opponent was imploding. Like the Democrats were so busy infighting that that was basically all the news was talking about.
Yeah, it was
So
already Joe.
Yeah, like Donald Trump didn't need to stage anything. He could just sit back and watch the Democrats infight and ruin their own chances.
Which they were successfully doing literally until this happened.
Yeah,
Like every major party news rag was saying, "Can we please replace Joe Biden with another candidate?"
yeah, and now that's not going to happen because this Trump attempted assassination is taking over the news cycle, obviously, and so that's taking pressure off of having Joe Biden removed from the ticket.
But in actuality, that was actually just another win for Trump, because he did survive. He did prove to be the kind of literally iconic, archetype of heroism that usually only occurs in Hollywood movies. So he was already winning because Biden had made a fool of himself. He was already watching them slowly decay in front of the nation's eyes. He had already won, and then nature just handed him another win because, rather than, get his gray matter splattered like you'd expect, it nicked his ear and he kept going, and then we got the iconic scene to end all iconic scenes. So it literally, it's all it's almost as if reality itself bent over backwards to hand Trump an even more decisive win that he was already getting with the incompetence of Joe Biden.
And honestly, Democrats themselves are doing themselves any favors because when people go online and they see all these posts about people wishing the shooter had succeeded and that the next person who might try doesn't miss, that's going to make people realize exactly how insane these people are.
Yeah, for the side of politics that is always so obsessed with optics and stochastic terrorism and the subtextual and subliminal implications of media and things, you guys really don't know how not to say the quiet part out loud, do you? Because it's not our
Right.
side that engages in the power mapping and the optics game. It is definitely your side, and yet you suck at it anyway.
All right,
Anyway,
let's
yeah, moving on.
keep going.
Basically, he gets bundled off into a car, and that's the end of it, taken to safety.
Well, time for the MAGA hat, I think.
Boom.
Well, I think everyone's probably seen this already. It's safe to say that that was one of the most amazing pieces of
Yeah.
video footage I've ever seen.
That was absolutely epic.
Mm.
Just, I mean, Trump has no idea what's going on, gets shot, gets back up, and just puts his fist up. He doesn't know he's not still in danger. He doesn't know what's happened to the shooter. He doesn't know he's not going to catch another bullet, but that is so good.
Mm. Yeah, really good. I lived through a few sort of historic moments, like 9/11, and quite often it's not a moment, like you say, you mentioned one of them as the COVID thing. That wasn't really one moment, was it?
No.
But like seeing those planes fly into the World Trade Centers, it's like a moment, or seeing them collapse. Yeah, this is like a moment in time, which is certainly historic, isn't it? And I was saying just before we started, obviously it's one of the most obvious things to say about it, how close it was to just being another bit of JFK snuff footage. Like he's seeing his head blow up, basically.
Here's a
Yeah, like regarding JFK, Donald Trump, I believe, actually talked to RFK Jr. following the attempted assassination, because obviously, his father and his uncle were both assassinated, so that would be someone good to talk to after an incident like this.
Yeah, you would certainly think so.
It just something like this hasn't happened in quite a while, so it just
I believe the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. The 70s, right?
well, they say that there was there was an attempt on George Bush's life, the second George Bush, but I believe that someone had thrown a grenade up on stage and he was speaking, but they didn't take the pin out.
Okay. So, like, at the very least, it's the most real equivalent since the 70s then.
Yeah, I think Reagan was the last one who got shot at.
Yeah.
But it shows like the degradation of politics in America, which, the media has not done anything to help. They've made it honestly worse by claiming that Donald Trump is this existential threat to democracy. And I'm like,
Which is why I led with the what the hell else did you expect to happen point. Because again, it was basically the entire journalist profession speaking with one voice about it. It was basically all of Hollywood speaking with one voice about it. And hell, even things like, the demonization of incels and the institution of like feminist intersectionality and the demonization of toxic masculinity made it into the APA guidelines. So, and let's not forget all of the academics who have, been stirring the pot all this while too. So academia was stirring the pot, journalism was stirring the pot, the entertainment media was stirring the pot, and we're all basically saying variations on the same theme of this person is every negative thing a chap can unload in terms of like a secular ideology. The only thing they didn't do was call him a demon. And that's only because they are the anti-religious faction typically. But they called him every secular equivalent of a demon in every vector of civilization for 8 years.
I mean, there's no way they would call him a demon because a frightening number of people on the left and people who are vehemently anti-Trump, for some reason, appear to be pro-Satan.
While
And I'm not even talking
simultaneously
about
being
this.
anti-religious, full stop, in every other circumstance. Yeah. Well,
Wait,
with the exception of Islam, because they're brown and third world, and that makes them okay, even though they're more toxically patriarchal than any Western force.
yeah, I can't imagine a better way of just saying yes, we are the bad guys, and than saying, you know what, we're with Satan.
Well, we're with Satan and the people who, blow people up for their religion because they happen to be third world and brown, therefore they can do no wrong, even though they're far more traditionalistic and far more theocratic and far more patriarchal than any Western ideology you care to name.
Crap, my power's starting to go out. Shit, let's keep going before my power goes.
Yep.
Picture that I've seen doing the rounds of supposedly capturing the bullet in motion, perhaps the one that actually grazed his ear. And
Seems a bit low for the top of his ear there, but
it does, yeah. But it's
Maybe it's just another one that went past.
perhaps, yeah. But it's amazing that we actually have this picture of a live round being fired towards a presidential candidate.
Former president.
And former president, yes. And of course, there was this iconic photo.
And husband and father, let's not forget.
That's true. So there is this iconic photo that was taken, and
I mean, again, it's almost like the world itself conspired to make Trump look as good as possible. And I'm not therefore saying it was staged or conspiratorial or anything. I'm just saying between the Jover thing that happened a week prior to this and then this, it's as though the world conspired to give Trump a win in like divine protection or some kind of spell from Six Hexenhammer or something. I don't know, but the world seems to have conspired to hand Trump a win. Not that it's not deserved, mind you, but it does read that way from the outside looking in. E, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you didn't get cut off or anything.
Did you hear what I said about the journalist?
No.
What I was saying is that I read a report that journalists were actually telling people to not use this picture in their reporting because it makes Trump look too good.
But again, I'm afraid, my darlings, that unlike a lot of the comparisons that you use, which are concocted mostly by Hollywood, this actually really happened, though.
Yes, if we report reality, Trump looks amazing. We have to distort it.
It's as though again, it's all like I'm almost willing to chalk this up to Styx. Maybe Styx did something to tilt things in the name of Trump, or maybe it's the rule of three from all of those, dime store witch spells that got cast against Trump when he was president coming to roost. But like, it's as though reality itself is bending over backwards to give Trump a win. Because between this and the Jovering, it's an almost perfect set of circumstances. The only thing more perfect would be if Biden goes around Bidening for the rest of his campaign, and then like halfway through October, he dies of natural causes, and they have to replace him with Kamala at the last second. That would be the only way this could be more perfectly contrived to give Trump a win, and it seems to have happened organically.
Yeah, I mean, people are saying now that after what happened, it's time to tone down the rhetoric. But I don't think the media is, because at this point their brains are just so deranged by the mere existence of Donald Trump that they will not be able to help themselves. I believe it was MSNBC that pulled off their show called Morning Joe after the attempted assassination. They pulled it off the air following that day because I believe they knew that their host literally would not be able to help themselves and to slander this man even after he was almost assassinated, and
This
they
is
knew that
what
would not look good.
this is why I always caution people to never attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence, because situations like this prove just how many people are honest to goodness true believers in this stuff. And again, they realize it now. They realize what they did now. And they realize, oh shit, this makes us look bad because we've been saying he's a fascist and a Nazi and a theocrat and a threat to democracy for 8 goddamn years ad nauseum. But they still can't help themselves but do it because they do genuinely believe the shit they spew. It doesn't even occur to them that the shit they spew is as crazy as it self-evidently is to everyone else. True believers are
Yeah,
far more dangerous than opportunists, is what I'm saying.
and let me ask you something. Do you think, like, given how bad the first debate went for Biden and now Trump surged due to surviving this assassination attempt, like they have other debates planned? Like, do you think that the media is going to try and maybe twist things in Joe's favor when performing the next two debates? Because considering how behind he is, Joe's going to need literally all the help he can get if he wants to
They they
stand a
almost
chance.
well, I mean, they tried that with the CNN debate and it didn't go well, but they almost have to because at this point the only other option is to roll over and say, "Please take the position, sir." Like that's literally like the Jovering was bad enough last week, and we covered the Jovering. Um, but add this on top of the Jovering, and unless Biden drops dead the second week of October and they have to substitute in Kamala at the last second, there is literally not a way that I can think of that this could get more perfect for him. That's the only way I could see it being improved is if he goes around, being himself until like mid-October and then dies of natural causes, and they have to substitute in Kamala at the last second. Which, by the way, if that does happen, then it's an absolute hat trick, by the power of 3 for Trump. But like, that's literally the only way this could get any more like storybook or fairy tale levels of fixed in Trump's favor. The man he was running against went insane a week before he heroically proved himself after being shot at and being mostly unscathed by it at 70 goddamn 8 years old. The story literally writes itself at this point.
Yeah, like Trump has basically secured this election, but I think it's important that people not get too complacent because the last time a lot of things occurred that we didn't expect, like as we saw in Time magazine, the shadow campaign to save the election.
The the
So
the,
God
the
only
fo-
knows what's happening behind
fortification.
the scenes. Yeah, the fortification. So God only knows what could be happening behind the scenes in this election because they are definitely more desperate than they were in 2020.
I mean, they tried legalizing him out of the way. They tried slandering him out of the way. They tried demonizing him out of the way. And now somebody tried to literally shoot him out of the way, and he is still in the way. So, and meanwhile, Biden continues to necrotize and corpseify. So, like, the odds are ever against them making the establishment look appealing, unless somebody does something crazy on our side, which, by the way, don't do anything that they can spin into a fallacy. Seriously. Because if
Yeah.
you do, then this momentum gets a wrench thrown in it. The best way to ensure that he wins is to tip things in his favor electorally so hard that he can't be fortified out of the win this time.
All right, I'm gonna hit play again.
Actually grazed his ear, and
Seems a bit low for the top of his ear there, but
it does, yeah. But it's
Maybe it's just another one that went past.
perhaps, yeah. But it's amazing that we actually have this picture of a live round being fired towards a presidential candidate. It's
Former president.
and former president, yes. And of course, there was this iconic photo.
and husband and father. Let's not forget.
That's
Yeah.
true. So there is this iconic photo that was taken, and I couldn't think of anything better for his presidential campaign than this. I mean, to epitomise his strength as a leader while he's bloodied with his fist in the air with the American flag flying behind him whilst he's being escorted away by the Secret Service. What an image that
It is the photo, isn't it?
It
I
is,
call
yeah.
it.
A couple of things to say about that. The blue sky in the background, sort of picture perfect, and the way it's almost like a composition, a proper painting composition where it's got the triangle thing going on. It drags your eye to the centre, and of course, it's reminiscent, incredibly somehow, of the very very famous image of the Marines on Iwo Jima raising the flag at the top of the mountain on Iwo Jima. It's sort of iconic, isn't it? Immediately iconic.
Mm-hmm.
It seems broadly representative of the state of the Republic at the moment.
Actually,
I
saw the
want somebody
photographer
to
when
make
the
a
shots were
painting of
being
this,
taken
like in a
run
Baroque
across.
style, like in a Renaissance style. It would be so amazing if somebody made a painting of this.
I believe someone did. I remember seeing a post about someone doing this as a painting on X, but I didn't save it. I don't recall it. So
Across the firing line to get to that position to take the photo. So it's very impressive work from them as well. And of course, the media have picked up on this, being the cover of Time magazine. Obvious pick, really, and lots of media outlets have chose this picture because, of course, they would. It's one of the most iconic pictures I've ever seen.
Can we just talk about the event itself for a second, though? Because I mean, this is so lucky for Trump to have escaped with just part of his ear shot off.
Yeah, you can see the grays in that image there, can't you? It's very minor, but as we'll be talking about later, he did get very, very lucky. There's
half an inch
to sort of foreshadow that. If he wasn't looking at this picture, funny enough, of illegal migration, there's like a graph.
Right.
If he didn't have to look at that graph, if he'd somehow memorized it and didn't turn his head ever so slightly, then that would have hit him in the head and it would have killed him. Simple as that. And so if he didn't turn his head ever so slightly, it would be over. Which, I can certainly understand why people saying that there was some sort of divine protection or he's got the mandate of heaven, because you can see that, right? That the sheer amount of luck that has to be involved for him to be grazed in that way and not be seriously harmed is massive.
It's mad.
So here is the New York Post, and they've got a very helpful graphic of where Trump was on stage, that lower red box there. And then you've got the Secret Service agent that shot the shooter, and then the shooter there around, I've seen 130 yards, 150 yards, something in that ballpark.
So not far then.
No, not really. And we'll be talking about that because we have a lot of reason to believe that the shooter didn't necessarily know what he was doing, which is interesting.
In terms of handling a rifle, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
So
I was going to say he knew.
Yeah, so in regards to the shooter, I read somewhere that he had actually tried out for his school's rifle team, but was rejected because he was a piss poor shot. Which, thank God for incompetence.
Yeah, no, thank you, random shooter person, for being an idiot. Because if you weren't an idiot, let's be real here. If he had been successful, there would be riots within riots within riots. It would, and I know it's usually the other side that does all the, smashing and arson and stuff. But I think if Trump had honestly, pulled a MLK just now, A lot of people would be making January 6th look like they went out for ice cream or something, by comparison. So it's both good for like just general morale and also good for like history, so to speak. I think that he did survive by the skin of his ear, so to speak. And I honestly
I,
think that we should even be grateful that it did graze his ear, because if it had just whizzed past him, it wouldn't lead to the iconic "it, grazed him" thing. So this literally couldn't be more perfect optically if it was planned that way.
yeah, the only major downside being the life of the man who died, the firefighter and
Yeah,
father.
obviously it would have
But
been better if no one had died, or at least, no one had been majorly injured. But,
yeah,
unfortunately, you can't have everything.
yeah, I gotta
But at
think.
the very least, the guy who did die died about as heroically as a person is able to die.
But I have to think though that perhaps if this guy had been a better shot and made his rifle team, maybe he would have had a better life and then just not have done this in the
And
first
not
place.
gone crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's
So that,
something we'll
yeah,
never
there's
know, I
that.
guess.
And again, this is another reason why I wish the shooter had been taken alive, so we could know more about him. Because
Yeah.
as sadistic as it is better to know what motivates the crazies than not know. Like, it's better to have an understanding of how they went from point A to B to C than to not know.
Yeah. Because also, if we understand, why he did this, we'll have a better uh, barometer of politics of the country. Because right now, it's basically everybody pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah, no, he was an Antifa member. No, he was a right winger, and he only supported the left at one time. Blah blah blah. Like, yeah, we'll never know what actually went through his head unless he left behind some kind of manifesto.
Yeah.
Which most crazies do at least have the decency to leave behind a manifesto when they go. So we know what motivated them, at least in theory.
Yeah, the thing is, the FBI is investigating the shooting now, and even if they do find his manifesto, we may never hear it.
Yeah, we won't. It'll be 2070 something before we actually have a definitive answer there.
Yeah.
Who's shooting Trump, right?
Well, he didn't get there by accident, no.
Yeah.
But this gives the best lay of the land I've been able to see. I've scoured everywhere, looked at all sorts of different satellite imagery, and this is easily the best angle to see it. But you can see that not only does that rooftop have a pretty good angle on Trump there, but also the Secret Service agents had a very good angle on the shooter there, the sort of lip of that rooftop. And so we'll be talking a lot about that. But what I wanted to talk about as well is that Donald Trump, after the shooting, did give comments to the New York Post. And I'll be reading some of them. He says, the doctor at the hospital said he never saw anything like this. He called it a miracle. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead. And he's on the Secret Service, who took out the shooter, said they took him out with one shot right between the eyes. They did a fantastic job. And on the iconic picture that's doing the rounds, he says, a lot of people say it's the most iconic photo they've ever seen. They're right, and I didn't die. Usually you have to die to have an iconic picture. You can hear his
Mr.
speech
Trump,
patterns,
I
even
have
his
to
quotes
disagree
there.
with you
He
on
says,
one point because you are supposed to be here. Like, seriously, my dude, you are the once and future president. My dear Mr. Trump, you are supposed to be here. If this proves anything, it proves that someone somewhere on the like supernatural scale of things is in your corner, sir.
Well, that just makes me, think to all the people who are, still down on Trump, even after this incident, like, what more could the man possibly do to prove his worthiness for the office, in your opinion? He was already president once and did a pretty good job. He certainly did better than Biden has been doing over the last 4 years. Like he showed that he really does care about this country. He's been fighting off lawfare. He survived an assassination attempt. Like there's nothing more this man could possibly do
He
to convince
iconically
people.
put his fist to the sky in a nod to like the Breakfast Club or the punk movement. Like, does he literally have to like pull a sword from a stone somewhere, like a stone at anvil? Is that what it takes at this point?
To be fair,
Sorry.
if George Washington's spirit came down from heaven and basically said, "Trump, you are the one to lead America into the future," these people still wouldn't vote for him.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They would say the sword in the stone was rigged, derp it a derp it a derp, or monarchy is bad, don't you know, etc.
Yeah. But I want to keep going because we've been almost at an
Trump
hour
has not
already.
been changed by
No,
this.
not one bit. By luck or by God, many people are saying it. By God, I'm still here. Still got the same Trumpisms there.
As a shot, the guy that did it, he was a loser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loser, this guy.
Worst shot.
Yeah.
That's superb.
hmm So it is worth mentioning a lot of the shots did miss Donald Trump and hit the crowd behind. And this is obviously a real tragedy because it not only injured 2 attendees but killed another, and a gentleman by the name of Corey Comperator, I believe. And I wanted to have a look at this gentleman because it is a really quite tragic story that I'm probably going to find quite difficult to read, because here he is celebrating his 50th birthday, and I believe, is this his daughter writing a message or a
so,
family
yeah.
member?
Yeah,
Okay. So I'm going to read this in full, and it says, this is from Alison. Yesterday, time stopped, and when it started again, my family and I started living a real-life nightmare. What was supposed to be an exciting day that we had all looked forward to, especially my dad, turned into the most traumatizing experience someone could imagine. I know the media will cover this event, and I'm going to try my best to stay away from looking at everything, especially because I've already seen and lived through it in real time. But I want everyone to know what the media will not cover and will not say about him. He was the best dad a girl could ask for. My sister and I never needed for anything. You cool, he would answer. He would do whatever it is you needed. And if he didn't know how, he would figure out how. He could talk and make friends with anyone, which he was doing all day yesterday and loved every minute of it. He was a man of God, loved Jesus fiercely, and also looked after our church and our members as family. The media will not tell you that he died, a real-life superhero. They're not going to tell you how quickly he threw my mum and I to the ground. They're not going to tell you that he shielded my body from the bullet that came at us. He loved his family. He truly loved us enough to take a real bullet for us. I want nothing more than to cry on him and tell him thank you. I want nothing more than to wake up and for this not to be a reality for me and my family. We lost a selfless, loving husband, father, brother. And where were we? Okay. And I will never stop thinking about him and mourning over him until the day that I die too. July 13th will forever be a day that changed my life. I'll never be the same person I was less than 24 hours ago. There are a lot of children out there that say their dad is a hero, but my dad really is mine. I don't think I would be here today without him. Dad, I love you so much that there aren't enough words to express how deep that love goes. I know you'll give heaven some hell. I know that God is proud of the man that came to his gates yesterday. Oh, that was a difficult read.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, condolences, because freaking obviously condolences. But secondly, I don't think she's like recontextualizing this or reframing this in her head. This is as close to iconically and classically heroic as it's possible, I think, to happen IRL. And I think even though obviously she is sentimentally affected by this, because who the fuck wouldn't be? I think there's a decent case that her appraisal of him is fairly objective, because we do know that he was a volunteer firefighter, and we know that, like, the actual forensic evidence shows that he used his own body as a human shield for his family. So I don't think we could. There's nothing. There's nothing tainted or rose-colored in her description here. I think she's just relaying the truth as it happened, and I think it's another one of those iconic aspects of this, that something so like Hollywood storytelling happened IRL, and it happened to the side that they've been saying were fascists for 8 years. If you needed any proof that the side that says Argle, Flargle, Blargle, our opponents are fascists, are the baddies, compare it to the people who they are calling the devil. Compare it to the people who they are calling Nazis and fascists and theocrats and everything. One
Yeah, and if you
side
want
has people like this dude, the other side has people like Vosh.
to forget
Just
Vosh,
saying.
freaking Destiny has been worse than Vosh over the
Yeah,
past
yeah,
like 72 hours.
my brother in advocacy for social democracy, what in the actual fuck has gone wrong in your head?
Destiny has just become like warped. Like he's
He's
gone off the
usually
rails.
one of
Like
the most reasonable ones. Like, remember when Kyle Rittenhouse happened, and he like schooled Vosh epically on the obvious it was self-defense, you moron. He was being mauled by an angry mob. Like that's what surprises me more than anything about the way Destiny reacted to this. Like he was right. He was Johnny on the spot when the Kyle Rittenhouse thing happened. And here, basically, a very similar scenario happened, and he is more deranged than Vosh. He's more deranged than Hassan. He's more deranged than Steve motherfucking Shives. Like, good goddamn, it's insane. And I think, according to his description, the thing that changed his mind on this and made it not like a Rittenhouse situation was the immunity ruling for Trump. And the thing is, all the Supreme Court did was make explicit something that had been implicit for decades. So I don't know why people are acting like this is some massive revelatory king making scenario here. It's literally the the text of the issue as read. All that changed was it was read out loud instead of just being implicit from now on.
yeah, but Destiny's gone so far left. I couldn't even see him on the horizon.
And again, usually I am fairly close to Destiny, like political policy wise. Like again, I know I can be rather quote unquote right wing on this show because I'm a men's rights advocate and because I have friends who are more conservative than I am and stuff. But policy wise, I'm still a goddamn Bernie bro. I supported Bernie both times, and my second and third choice the last time were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. So like I am a dyed in the wool, classically liberal in principle, social democrat in terms of policy person, and yet I appear to be the only person who can look at this and see it for what it is and not go fucking insane, which is not an unusual feeling at this point because, like I said, the left as a whole has gone various levels of insane for the last 8 to 9 years. But it perplexes me that someone like Destiny, who is normally at least adjacent to me politically, has gone so far to the radical wings of his positions that Vosh is looking sane, and so is Hassan. So
Like Destiny, like actively like insulted like the man, his daughter. Like he's basically shown no humanity for the people who've been affected by this. And like I'm just asking, like, dude, like, forget politics. Just like, as a human being, what the hell are you doing?
did you see his reaction to the fact that he was a swing state voter on Wick TV?
Is that the one where he said all I'm seeing is +1 for Biden in Pennsylvania?
Or No, I don't think that was the one. That was the oh my god, a string state voter, fuck, rant. It was seriously one of the most unhinged things I've ever seen from Destiny or from anyone else. Like, I was expecting Vosh to be an idiot because Vosh is he's perennially an idiot. I was expecting Hassan to be a brainlet because he's perennially a brainlet. But I was expecting Destiny to at least have the good sense to shut the fuck up and not incriminate himself, left, right, center, and sideways for a week on end. I apparently expected too much of Destiny, which is
I mean,
disparaging.
the more he talks, like he just keeps digging the hole deeper. At this point, I'm surprised if the man can see daylight.
Yeah, Dev 2 has, like, he's not in the same place Destiny is, but he's adjacent to where Destiny is. Like, unironically, I watched Dev's like live reaction to the shooting because they were literally streaming as the thing was going down, and then I
Yeah, the
watched
Archcast I was watching too.
Yeah, and then I looked over to see what Vosh was saying because, of course, because he's one of the usual suspects, and both Dev and Vosh made a fucking Chancellor Palpatine reference. When Short Fat Otaku is sounding more like Vosh than he is like Arch, we may have a problem.
Yeah, Dev is dumb. Destiny has shown himself to just be vile.
Yeah, and it's two different blind spots, I think, for them. For Destiny, it's the allegedly, world-changing, king-making immunity decision, and for Dev, it's just the good old-fashioned normative institutions and my center can do no wrong, Dirk thing that he always his typical blind spot.
Yeah, but regarding the family that passed, like I'm actually highly impressed that the daughter was able to write this statement, and my heart really does go out to her. Like recently, when my younger cousin, who was like a brother to me, passed away, I wrote something to say his funeral, and that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life. So I can only imagine how much harder it would be to lose your father, and not only to lose him, but to lose him right in front of you, and have to write something about his life. I mean,
As he's
that
shielding
shows
you from bullets.
it. She showed incredible strength, and I'm sure that while it's extremely beyond extremely, almost unimaginable time to get through, I'm sure that her father would be very proud for the strength that she's shown thus far.
And like I mentioned earlier, it's also an extremely objective, extremely non-rose colored, extremely articulate statement as well, which I don't know if I would be that articulate in a similar situation. So I have to give props to her for her ability to be articulate and objective about something this devastatingly personal to her, no doubt.
Yeah. Let's keep going for a little bit more, but we've already been going for an hour, so let's only go for a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just very interesting to me how Carl Rittenhouse can fire into a bloody gang of Antifa and hit a paedophile, a wife beater, and a felon. But someone fires into a Trump crowd and they hit family men.
Yeah.
I think Destiny just flatly said fuck him as well.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I don't care about
That shows the bitterness of people, doesn't it? But there is a fundraiser for the victims' families, and this is endorsed by former President Trump himself, and it has already reached 3.6 million. But yeah, and I know that money can't exactly bring those people back, that person back. But
bloody hell, the Heritage Foundation donated $50,000.
They deserve financial damages. God damn it! If nothing else, they deserve financial damages. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw on social media that Tristan Tate, Andrew Tate's brother, donated $10,000 to the family. And whatever criticisms you may have of the Tate brothers, that was unquestionably a good thing that he was doing for them.
Yeah, this is why my take on the brothers Tate is that they are well-meaning but stupid rather than malignant narcissists, because shit like this and shit like the actual like empathetic shit they say implies to me that it's obviously they enjoy and obviously they care about the glitz and the glamour and the money and the power and shit, because who wouldn't? But they're much like Donald Trump in this instance. I think there is an actual decent core to the Brothers Tate, even if they are a little bit stupid and dense and overly like hyperbolic. That apparently is not in the heart of one Stephen Destiny Bonnell. So fuck me, I guess.
We do have it linked in the reading list on our website, and if you want to find it, you need to go to our website, and it'll be down below underneath the videos if you want to donate some money. I fully support those who do, because it's certainly not going to bring back him, but it will help the families to some extent. But anyway, now I've got that said, I suppose we may as well talk about the shooter. And here he is. This is Thomas Matthew Crooks. He's 20 years old, or was, and he graduated recently, 2 months ago, with an associate degree in engineering science, and he worked as a dietary aide in a local nursing home. He had no criminal record, no history of mental health issues, no history of military service either, and just some tidbits of information here. This is what's being sort of circulated. He wasn't allowed on the school shooting team because he was such a bad shot, and that's what has been reported. Apparently, according to some of his classmates, he wore hunting clothes to school, though, and apparently he was bullied almost every day. Which,
Well,
we should all be very, very, very grateful he was such a like iconically bad shot, because if not, he would have Lee Harvey Oswalded Trump. So there's that.
Yeah. I also heard somewhere that his parents were, I believe, a social worker and a counselor. But you would think that, given their professions, that they would be able to, see the signs that their son was, deeply unwell.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, the current APA guidelines basically canonize intersectional feminism, toxic masculinity, and the demonization of incels. So it's possible they did try to help him and they only made it worse, because psychology is currently being tainted by ideology and misandry and genuinely selfless. And I do want to bring it back to the misandry angle for a second here, because we are, at the end of the day, after all, a men's rights podcast. And like I was saying earlier, with the news media, with academia, with the psychological profession, and with Hollywood, all basically singing from the same diabolic hymn sheet for the last 8 years, it is no wonder that they failed this man. It is no wonder that he was not given the help he needed, because even the people, the psychologists and things, the social workers and things, who are designed to help him, don't believe in a large part of his basic humanity because of the misandric and frankly straight up misanthropic nature of these neo-Hegelian ideologies. When the APA sees toxic masculinity conjecture and intersectionality theory to be a main crux of how to treat psychologically unwell men and boys, and that's the establishment's attempt to help them by demonizing them and telling them everything they do is their own fault, it is no wonder that someone like this happened, and it is no wonder that they were, pushed in the direction of doing what they did to Trump, because for the last 8 years, every, to use Dev's favorite phrase, every normative institution was ideologically captured and spewing the same alarmist scatological nonsense and throwing every demonization word at Trump they possibly could. So, in a world where toxic masculinity and the hatred of incels is best treatment practices for a psychologist, and in a world where every normative institution was overtly demonizing Trump in every way they could for 8 solid years and in every vector they possibly could, what the hell else did you expect?
I mean, and to back up a bit, like they say that this kid was bullied constantly in school. Like, did no one attempt to intervene? Did his parents not know about it? Did the school not know about it? I mean,
Yeah.
schools are constantly going on about how anti-bullying they are, yet this kid was allowed to get basically mentally tortured every single day, and no one did a damn thing about it.
And that's the ironic thing. Even while saying bullying is not acceptable here, this, that, and the other, and I am going to make a very broad statement here. Almost every mass shooter or school shooter of this kind has a history of bullying that would be reminiscent of Carrie freaking White from Stephen King's Carrie, and yet they're surprised when the inevitable pyrokinetic blow up happens. It's always the people who are psychologically broken that end up doing shit like this. That's why I fucking can't stand this whole there's nothing we can do to prevent narcissists or sociopaths or borderline personality disorders from existing. Like, no, we know how this happens. You take a human mind, you give it no empathy or misplaced empathy at every interval, and then you torture it relentlessly until it psychologically breaks. That is how you make a school shooter or a mass shooter. You take a human who is, psychologically unwell to begin with, and you beat the shit out of them either socially or physically over and over again, and you give them no sense of moral worth, and then you get to, act all surprised when the inevitable happens and they blow up and decide they want to take their own back from a world that never gave them the time of day. I know we should all be focusing on Trump and we should be focusing on the victim and everything, and that's wonderful. But at some point, we have to talk about the issue of if we know that these kind of people almost invariably are the people who end up being school shooters, at some point we actually have to take some moral responsibility and do something about it. And that's by showing empathy to the undesirables of society. It is the only way to undo this kind of breaking, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, like I take away none of my sympathy from Trump or from the family of the man who lost his life, but it's
No, by
really
no
about
means,
trying.
but
It's about
some at
trying to
least.
understand.
Yeah.
Like you can't solve the problem of these people turning into shooters if you don't at least try to understand, because only by understanding can you figure out a solution to fix it to make sure that it stops happening.
And demonizing them does not work. You take a person
Yeah.
like this and you tell them they're morally worthless, or you tell them that they're an incel, or you tell them they're a virgin, or they're a nerd, or they're whatever. All you're doing is rubbing salt into the existing wound. You are not treating it, you morons. So maybe we should have some basic empathy for the unwashed and unworthy men. Because maybe if we have some empathy for those unwashed and unworthy men, they might not be quite so unwashed or quite so unworthy by the end of it. And they certainly
Yeah,
won't snap and turn into human time bombs.
like regarding bullying, like I have always believed that the best way to end bullying is to teach kids how to make the bullying stop themselves. Teach them how to stand up to the bully themselves instead of constantly running to a teacher, because there's going to be situations where the teacher's not there to help, and then what are you going to do? You have to give the kids the strength to get the bullying to stop on their own.
And that's one end of it. But hey guys, if you see the random weirdo loner kid sitting alone and constantly bemoaning how everyone is constantly miserable to him, have you considered the possibility of trying to become his friend? Have you considered the possibility that maybe instead of letting the guy sit by himself alone and fester for years and years and years, you might extend a hand in friendship and teach him that humanity in general isn't, completely worthless and designed purely for making his life hell? Because, and I'm speaking as one of those kids who did basically from the time I went to high school through like my junior or senior year was the kid who sat alone. And I've had people have told my mom that they felt bad for me because I sat alone all the time, and yet not one of them ever so much as like changed that by coming over and trying to engage with me in any way. Now, mind you, I'm a much more happy and I hope well-adjusted person than this guy. I mostly sat alone because most people um, didn't really like the same things I liked or wanted to engage with the same things I wanted to engage with, and so I found most of their company to be insufferable. But it would have still made a difference to me if somebody had tried instead of telling my mom, weeks later that they feel bad about it. They could have actually done something. And the same is true of kids like this. Instead of feeling bad for him from afar, or God forbid making the situation worse by calling him a loner and a loser who has no friends and gossiping about him and shit, maybe if you see the kid who's the loner, who we all know ends up being the school shooter at the end of the day, prevent the school shooting by treating him like a goddamn human being, please.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in situations where I was like, say, at a new school and I didn't know anybody and was, nervous to, put myself out there. But, you know, sometimes I would be quiet, but sometimes I would, make the effort myself to maybe try and, approach a group of, guys to sit with at lunch. And, I would usually be quiet until I got to know them a bit better.
Mm.
But But taking that step to maybe try to reach out to people whenever you don't really know anybody or have any friends, it's very hard.
It is. And it's also not something that comes either naturally or even with practice to some people, especially if they do have a troubled family life or no stable role models in their lives to, model themselves on.
Yeah. So we've been going for an hour and 22 minutes. I feel like we've been going for a while, but is there anything else that you want to touch on regarding the situation? I mean, it's a constantly evolving situation, so there's like no shortage of things to talk about.
I've touched on the what else did you think was going to happen and the all pervasiveness of the very quote unquote stochastic messaging for the last 8 years. We've touched on the commentary act community and their various reactions. We've touched on the victims and the heroic iconography both for the victims and for Trump. We've touched on how frankly like fairy tale epic a loss this is for Biden and the establishment. And we've touched on the sort of humanitarian or men's rights sort of angle of it. So I don't think, broadly speaking, there's anything left to cover. But please, someone try to take lessons from this. Like just in general, there are so many different lessons that a situation like this can bring, and there are so many different angles. And don't think that it's just one myopic thing or the other, because if a situation like this proves anything, it's that reality is always complicated. Because yes, you can feel bad for Trump and you can, reminisce about how heroic he is and how heroic the victim was and so on and so forth. And all of those things are true. But you can also look at it from the shooter's perspective and say to yourself, gee, maybe if someone had been kind to this kid for more than 5 minutes, this could have been avoided. And you also can entirely blame the 8 years of propagandistic war drum beating the news media, the entertainment media, the academia, and the goddamn psychological profession has begat with this nonsense, and how it is entirely likely that this is in no small part due to the all-pervasiveness of that singular message that almost everyone was on the side of.
Yeah,
I
because
don't believe in stochastic terrorism in general, but in overt propagandistic moments like this, it is definitely a thing. And I think that is a qualifier for what stochastic terrorism actually needs to mean. It's not just, oh, someone made a joke that, can be read as incitement. It's, is this a overt and continuous message, and is it overt and propagandistic, and is it borderline all pervasive? Then you can start talking about stochastic terrorism. Not when Count Dankula, teaches his pug to Nazi salute, but when every major normative institution, dev, is on the same side of the same issue for 8 goddamn years. It's not surprising that when every source of media someone can consume for basically their entire life is all going one way, they might go, well, shit, if he's that much of a threat to democracy, I might as well take him out. Maybe I can be a hero that way. You morons.
Yeah, like I absolutely agree. Like there was no escaping the anti-Trump rhetoric for the last few years. I mean, comics, movies, TV, gaming was literally everywhere. You couldn't get
The
away from it.
news,
And when you can't,
YouTube, etc., and so on. RedTube.
when you can't get away from it, it's going to sink into people's brains, and unfortunately, it's something to the brain of someone who already wasn't doing well.
And he did what people who aren't doing well always end up doing when they have finally had enough and need to let off steam.
But I have been Mystery.
I have been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Keep in mind the consequences, folks.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers, guys.